Rain hammered the glass doors so hard it sounded like handfuls of gravel, and the white marble in Bellwether Tower's lobby gave a dry, ugly snap beneath everybody's feet. The tenants who had spent months calling Anselm the mop man stood frozen with grocery bags, wet coats, and fear in their faces, while he, of all people, was the only one who moved. "Not the middle," he said, sharp and steady. "Keep left. Don't stop. Out. Now." There was no shaking in his voice, no guessing. He waved them away from the center of the lobby as if he already knew where the floor would fail. Mrs. Ellison clutched her little dog to her chest. Connor Pike, who had laughed at Anselm more than anyone, stumbled backwards so fast he nearly lost a shoe in the water spreading over the stone. Even Denise Harlan from the condo board, always polished, always certain, looked at the caretaker as if she had never seen him before. Then came another sound. A deep, heavy groan moved through the tower itself. People screamed. Someone reached for the elevator. Anselm caught the man by the sleeve and pulled him back so hard the buttons lit up and went dark again. The air smelled like wet concrete and hot wires. Dust drifted from a seam high over the front desk, and there, under the chandelier, with rain blowing in and the marble split open in a jagged line, the same quiet man they had treated like part of the cleaning equipment tilted his head and listened to the building, as if the walls were speaking straight to him. And the truth was, this was not the first warning Bellwether Tower had given him. If stories about hidden worth and hard-earned dignity mean something to you, subscribe and stay with me. Months before the rain and the split marble, Bellwether Tower still carried itself like an old man in a pressed suit. The brass mailboxes were scratched, the hallway carpet held the smell of dust and lemon cleaner, and the radiators clicked in winter like teeth in a glass. Anselm moved through all of it before sunrise, patched coat on his shoulders, ring of keys at his hip, mop water steaming faintly in the cold service hall. Most people barely looked at him. A few did worse. Connor Pike liked an audience, so he made jokes where others could hear them. "There he goes," he said one morning, balancing a coffee on a stack of packages. "Bellwether's resident ghost." You smile at him, he bills the building extra. Denise Harlan didn't laugh out loud, but she smiled into her phone and kept walking. That was her style. Polished shoes, soft voice, sharp edge. Anselm said nothing. He emptied bins, tightened a loose handrail, and when no one was paying attention, he tapped his knuckle against a painted column by the mailroom. Once, twice. Then he leaned in and listened. Just a second, enough to catch something other people never even thought to hear. Mara Bell saw him do it from the laundry room doorway. She was new to the tower, ink on her fingers, socks mismatched, always carrying too much in one arm. "What are you listening for?" she asked. He straightened slowly. Changes. That was all. Later that same week, the side entrance wouldn't latch unless it was slammed hard enough to rattle the glass. A thin line appeared near the elevator trim, pale as a pencil mark. And down in the parking level, under a humming strip light, Anselm crouched beside a concrete member, tapped once, and heard a hollow note that did not belong there. From that night on, he changed his route. He still polished the lobby brass and hauled out the trash bags that smelled of coffee grounds and takeout sauce. But now, he kept circling back to the same places. The side entrance, the elevator wall, the parking level. In the morning light, the pale mark near the trim had sharpened into a hairline crack. So fine, most people would have called it nothing. Anselm did not call it nothing. He touched the edge with 2 fingers, then took a carpenter's pencil from his pocket and made the smallest mark beside it. Mara noticed because she noticed everything odd. Is that bad? She asked, standing there in slippers with a basket of laundry against her hip. It's new, he said. That answer should have sounded small. It didn't. Later, down below, where the air always held a damp concrete chill, he brought a flashlight and an old folding rule. The beam he had tapped the other night ran across the garage ceiling, thick and dusty, with old paint flaking at the edges. He checked it again, knuckle first, then the handle of his screwdriver. The sound came back hollow in one section, dull in another. Wrong load path, he thought, though he did not say that out loud. Instead, he went to the basement office, sat at the scarred metal desk, and wrote a note in careful block letters to the condo board. Just facts. The door that would not latch, the crack tracking one column, the sound in the transfer beam, and a request for a structural inspection before any changes were made upstairs. He slid the paper under Denise Harlan's office door before noon. By evening, it was back on his cleaning cart with a coffee ring on it and 2 words written across the top in blue pen. Stay in lane. He read those 2 words once, folded the paper in half, and slipped it into his coat pocket as neatly as if it were a receipt. No anger on his face. That was the unsettling thing about Anselm. Insult hit him, but it never seemed to scatter him. The next few days, Bellwether kept making little confessions. The side door needed a shoulder to close. The pale line by the elevator crept a touch farther, fine as a thread under paint. In the garage, he checked the same concrete member again, this time with a flashlight between his teeth and the taste of metal in the air. The sound was still wrong. So was the feel of it. He wrote a second note, shorter than the first, and attached it to a maintenance request, with language even Denise couldn't call dramatic. She found him in the lobby that afternoon, while a florist was unloading white orchids for the front desk. Anselm, she said, holding the paper between 2 fingers, you are staff, not management. He kept stacking parcel slips. I'm aware. Then stay with staff matters. He looked at her for a moment. If a building problem becomes a people problem, whose matter is it? That landed harder than she expected. Her mouth tightened. You're overstepping. Before he could answer, Connor came through the revolving door grinning, carrying one of the new glossy mailers. Oh, come on, he said. Save the doom speech for later. You seen this? By evening, every apartment had the same brochure tucked under the door. Thick paper, gold lettering, artist drawings of a rooftop deck with stone planters, string lights, and a plunge pool under the words, Bellwether Reimagined. Anselm stood under the lobby lamp, reading every line. Then he turned the brochure over and went very still at the wait list printed in small gray type near the bottom. The next evening, the board held an owners' meeting in the community room off the lobby, where the air always smelled faintly of burnt coffee and old carpet glue. The glossy drawings were pinned to foam boards under bright lamps, rooftop deck, stone planters, a little plunge pool with blue water shining like a promise. People loved it. Connor whistled low when he saw the sketches. Denise stood near the front with that smooth, practiced smile of hers, talking about property value and bringing Bellwether into its next chapter. A contractor in a fitted jacket nodded at the right moments and clicked through cost slides on a screen. Anselm stayed by the back wall at first, hands folded behind him, coat still smelling of bleach and cold air from the service corridor. Mara noticed he wasn't looking at the pictures. He was looking at the numbers in the handout. Then the contractor said, "The roof can absolutely support the added amenities once reinforcement is localized." That was the moment he spoke. "Localized where?" Anselm asked. The room turned. Denise blinked as if the floor lamp had answered back. He didn't raise his voice. "What members carry the revised load path?" Has the transfer beam over the garage been inspected since the weight schedule changed? For a second, nobody said anything. Even Connor stopped smiling. The contractor recovered first. And you are? Building staff, Denise said quickly, before Anselm could answer. He handles maintenance. Anselm kept his eyes on the plans. Then whoever handles structure should answer. A few people shifted in their seats. Mara felt it, that tiny, uncomfortable moment when mockery and doubt stopped being the same thing. Denise stepped forward, cheeks tight. This is not the place. But he was already looking at the notes clipped to the bottom corner of the display board, and whatever he saw there made the color leave his face. Mara saw that change in him before anyone else did. After the meeting, he did not argue with Denise, and he did not try to explain himself to the contractor in the fitted jacket. He simply took one of the extra brochures, folded it into quarters, and went down to the service level with a pace that was calm on the outside and too fast underneath. Mara waited a minute, then followed. The basement office was lit by one buzzing fluorescent tube. It made everything look tired. The dented filing cabinet, the scarred desk, the mop sink with its rust ring. Anselm had an old drawer open, the bottom one, the one that stuck unless you pulled it hard to the left. Inside was a metal toolbox, dark with age. He lifted the lid and took out a roll of yellowed drawings tied with cotton string. Beneath them lay a small leather case, cracked at the corners. Mara only saw it for a second before he turned, but that second was enough. There was a seal inside, his name on it. And under his name, one word she did not expect to see anywhere near a mop bucket and drain cleaner. Engineer. He looked at her, not angry, just caught. I wasn't snooping, she said softly. I know. Mara glanced at the drawings. You knew what those notes meant upstairs? He exhaled through his nose, slow and tired. I knew enough. That was not a denial, and because it was not a denial, the room itself seemed to change shape around her. The patched coat, the quiet, the tapping on columns, the way he asked about weight and supports in a room full of owners, it all began settling into place. Then he untied the drawings, spread the first sheet across the desk, and Mara saw Bellwether's original structural plans, marked by his own hand. Mara stood over the desk while the paper edges curled under the basement's stale air. The drawing was old, blue faded almost to gray, but the lines were clean, careful, certain. Bellwether's columns, its spans, notes in the margin written by the same hand that now scrubbed lobby floors and changed hallway bulbs. You worked on this building, she said. Anselm rested his fingertips on the corner of the sheet. Not the original design. Years later, I was brought in to review movement after a settlement issue. He said it plain, with no pride in it. The tower had one vulnerable point. If the loads stayed honest, it would hold. Mara looked up. And now? Now, people with glossy brochures are calling weight an amenity. That was the first bitter thing she had ever heard from him. He opened the leather case again and took out a small metal scale, a folding caliper, and a notebook filled with old figures. No flourish, no speech, just tools. He copied numbers from the roof proposal, checked the marked plans, and wrote a third warning in tighter, harder print than before. This one named the transfer beam directly. This one asked for a licensed review before one more planter, one more inch of water, one more decorative stone went upstairs. Mara said quietly, if they know who you are, they'll have to listen. He gave a tired half smile. People don't always listen to truth. They listen to rank. The next morning, Denise read the letter in the lobby while workers rolled in sample tiles on a dolly. She didn't lower her voice. "This is absurd," she said. "A caretaker is now issuing engineering orders?" Connor, standing by the mailboxes, laughed. "Careful, the mop man might cancel the whole renovation." A few others laughed too. Anselm did not answer. He only took the letter back, folded it once, and headed for the garage with his notebook. Because if they would not respect his name, he would have to trust his next deflection reading. After that, Bellwether entered one of those stretches when change looks harmless because it arrives a little at a time. Workers started coming through at dawn with carts that squealed over the lobby tile. Samples became deliveries. Deliveries became noise. By the end of 2 weeks, the service elevator smelled like wet plywood, fresh grout, and cut stone. Long boxes were stacked in the loading bay. Steel edging leaned against the wall. Up on the roof, crews marked out the footprint for planters and the plunge pool, while Denise walked around in a hard hat she wore like jewelry. Anselm kept measuring. He said very little now, even to Mara. He had a string line set in the garage, a notebook in his coat, and a way of looking up at the ceiling that made her uneasy every time she saw it. The side entrance had to be slammed with a hip now. The thin mark near the elevator had branched. Just a whisper, but enough. He checked it, marked it, moved on. At night, he stood beneath the transfer beam with a flashlight and listened after each tap. If anyone has ever looked at your uniform, your paycheck, your age, or your rough hands and decided you had nothing worth saying, you already know this kind of loneliness. If that's you, leave a word in the comments, because sometimes truth shows up in work boots and gets laughed at before it gets believed. Mara did not leave it there. One night, with rain misting the windows of her apartment, she searched his name. It took time. Old trade bulletins, archived photos, half-broken links. Then she found it. A younger Anselm Reed in a dark suit beside a concrete tower model. His name printed under the headline in bold. She stared at the screen, then at the ceiling above her. Down below, in the garage, he checked his notebook under the hum of a strip light. And for the first time, his hand paused before he wrote the next number. She went down to the garage before sunrise, while the concrete still held the night's cool and the strip lights buzzed like tired insects. Anselm was there already, notebook open on the hood of the maintenance cart, pencil laid across the page. Mara held out the printout she had found online. The paper shook a little in her hand. "I think this belongs to you." He looked at the article, then at her. A younger version of himself stared back from the page in a hard-collared shirt, standing beside a tower model with a room full of cameras behind him. The name was the same. So was the gaze, just less worn. "I wondered when you'd find it," he said. "You could have told me." "I could have," he answered. "But people hear old titles before they hear present facts." Mara stepped closer. "Then tell me now." For a long moment, he said nothing. Water dripped somewhere in the garage. A fan belt squealed in the distance. Finally, he closed the notebook. He told her enough, not everything. Years ago, he had been respected, hired for difficult structures, called in when other people wanted clean answers to ugly problems. Then came one project with rushed decisions, nervous money, and a warning nobody wanted in writing. He gave it anyway. When blame started looking for a home, it found the man who had refused to smile and agree. "My wife got sick not long after," he said quietly. "Work fell away. Then she was gone. After that, I stopped needing rooms full of people to know my name." Mara's eyes stung, but he had already turned back to the beam overhead, as if grief and math belonged in the same breath. "I stayed because this building made sense," he said. "People don't." He picked up the pencil again, checked the fresh mark, and this time the number he wrote made him go still enough that even Mara stopped breathing. That number changed the way he moved through the day. To everyone else, he was still the same quiet man hauling cardboard, wiping fingerprints from the lobby glass, and resetting the temperamental light on 12. But Mara could see the difference now. He was no longer watching for trouble. He was measuring how fast it was arriving. The weather turned hot that week, the kind of sticky, pressing heat that made hallway air feel used before noon. Window frames swelled, doors dragged. Even the side entrance gave a tired groan before it shut. Up on the roof, workers kept going. Soil went into planters, stone caps were set. Water lines were tested for the plunge pool. Every new load made Anselm's jaw tighten. He went to Denise one more time. She was in the management office, with the fan rattling on a filing cabinet and renovation invoices spread across her desk. He placed his notebook in front of her and opened it to the latest page. "This is past where it should be," he said. Denise barely glanced down. "What I see is a janitor making numbers in a notebook." "What you're seeing," he answered, "is movement." She sat back. "You need to stop this, Anselm. You're upsetting people, and you are not licensed here. Not for this. Not anymore." The words hung there. So she had looked him up after all. He gave the smallest nod, like a man confirming bad weather. "Then call someone who is." Instead, she slid the notebook back across the desk. By late afternoon, Connor was joking in the lobby that Bellwether's resident prophet had predicted the roof would fall in before cocktail hour. A couple of people laughed. A couple did not. That evening, Anselm went down to the garage for another look. He crouched beneath the beam, set his line, checked the mark, and then, very slowly, reached for the fire alarm key he kept on his ring. He held that key for one breath, and then made the decision Denise never would. The alarm hit Bellwether like a blade of sound. Sirens burst through the halls, red strobes flashed against cream walls, and doors started opening all at once. The building changed in a second, from quiet evening routine to confusion. Voices, barking dogs, a crying child somewhere on 8, somebody yelling from a balcony that this had better not be another false alarm. Anselm was already moving. He caught Mara by the stairwell door and put a ring of override keys into her hand. "Top floors first," he said. "Knock hard. No elevators. Keep people left when they come down." She didn't argue. She ran. He took the lower floors himself. His voice stayed calm, but it carried now in a way no one had heard from him before. "Shoes on if you can. Leave the boxes. Take your medicine, take the child, take the dog, and move." People obeyed because panic had no room to argue with certainty. Mrs. Ellison came out wrapped in a robe, clutching her little dog, and he guided her straight to the stairs. Connor opened his door angry, phone in hand, ready with a complaint, until Anselm said, "Not tonight. Down." And something in his face made Connor go. Denise came into the hallway furious. "Did you pull that alarm?" "Yes." "Do you understand what this is going to cost?" He looked past her, listening. Then he said, very quietly, "More if we stay." The stairwell filled with footsteps, rubber soles, shouted names, the metallic pound of doors swinging shut. Heat hung in the halls like wet cloth. On the 7th floor, he checked off another unit, another one, and then stopped. One apartment hadn't answered, and above that corridor, deep in the concrete, came a low sound he had heard only once before in his life. He did not waste a second on fear. The silent unit belonged to Mr. Vale, a widower on the 7th floor who kept his television too loud and his hearing aids on the kitchen counter more often than in his ears. Anselm hit the door with the side of his fist. "Mr. Vale!" No answer. The sound in the concrete came again, deeper now, like a giant piece of furniture dragging somewhere inside the walls. Mara came up the stairs, flushed and breathless. "Top floors are moving." "Good," he said. "Help me." Between them, they forced the door. The apartment smelled of stale tea, warm dust, and the rattling fan beside Mr. Vale's chair. He woke confused, blinking at the flashing red light in the hallway. Anselm did not explain more than needed. Shoes, now, on your feet. He got the old man upright, steadied him, and guided him into the stairwell, while Mara grabbed the hearing aids and jammed them into Mr. Vale's hand. By the time they reached the lobby, rain had started. Hard summer rain, blowing in when somebody shoved the front doors wide. Wet umbrellas, soaked jackets, alarm lights, voices tripping over each other. The whole place had turned to noise and shine. Denise was trying to count people. Connor was swearing that his laptop was still upstairs. Mrs. Ellison was shivering with her dog tucked under one arm. Then the marble cracked. A sharp line, jagged and fast, ran across the white floor near the front desk. People screamed and lurched back. One man tried to bolt toward the elevators. Anselm caught him and shoved him left. "Out!" he shouted. "Keep moving!" And right then, under the chandelier, with rainwater sliding across broken stone, the tower gave a heavy, sickening shudder, followed by a single booming release from deep below their feet. The sound rolled through Bellwether and then stopped so suddenly that the rain outside seemed louder than the building itself. For one strange second, nobody moved. Then dust drifted from a seam above the concierge desk. The lights flickered and the spell broke. People stumbled out into the storm, shoes splashing through gutter water, faces turned back toward the tower as if it might explain itself. Connor stood in the rain with his shirt plastered to his back, staring at Anselm like he had never understood what a human being could hide under a patched coat. Anselm did not watch the crowd. He watched the facade, the lobby line, the rhythm of the settling. "Keep them away from the center doors," he told Mara, "and no one goes back in." She nodded and started repeating it to whoever would listen. Sirens came fast after that. Fire trucks, utility vans, an emergency building inspector with a hard hat under one arm and rain running off his jaw. Denise rushed toward him first, talking too quickly, trying to explain the alarm, the panic, the caretaker who had overreacted. But the inspector's attention shifted the moment he saw Anselm's open notebook in Mara's hands. "Whose is that?" he asked. "His," Mara said. The inspector took it, flipping wet pages with careful fingers. Door latch, crack progression, dates, notes on roof loading, measurements made weeks apart, a line about the garage member, a page flagged with the latest change. He looked up slowly. "Where did you get these readings?" "I took them," Anselm said. The man stared another second, then another, as if a half-remembered photograph were trying to come into focus. Rain tapped on the hard hat tucked against his hip. Behind them, Bellwether stood wounded but upright. Then the inspector said a name like it had been buried for years and had just come back to him. "Anselm Reed?" The inspector took one step closer, rain running off his coat collar, and looked at him the way people look at a face they know from another life. "You're Reed," he said again, louder this time. "Anselm Reed." Nobody in the parking lanes spoke. Denise didn't. Connor didn't. Not even Mara. The inspector held up the wet notebook. "These notes are solid." Door shift, crack travel, roof load, timing, you tracked the whole failure. He glanced toward Bellwether's darkened entrance, then back to the man in the patched coat. "If you hadn't cleared this building when you did, we'd be having a very different night." That was the moment the names people had used for him died in their own mouths. Denise looked as if the rain had washed the color out of her. Connor stared at the broken lobby doors and said, almost to himself, "We called him the Mop Man." Mrs. Ellison, still holding her little dog under her coat, answered without meanness, "And he still came for all of us." In the days that followed, Bellwether was wrapped in fencing, warning tape, and silence. Reports were written. The board was forced to answer for every note they ignored. Denise resigned before the formal hearing was over. The contractor vanished behind lawyers and statements. But Anselm did something none of them expected. He came back. He came back with rolled plans under one arm and a hard hat in the other, not a mop bucket this time. The same lobby that had once heard people laugh at him now heard workers ask, "Mr. Reed, do you want this shored here or here?" And he answered in the same calm voice, as if dignity had never left him, only waited. Because that is how some truths stand in the world. Quiet as a pencil mark beside a wall, easy to ignore until the whole room begins to lean. Weeks later, Mara passed the tower at sunrise and saw him by the taped-off entrance, palm dusty with chalk, drawing one straight line where the repair would begin. If this story stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe for more stories where the quiet ones are finally heard.